He built an empire on cars, charisma, and control, the face of Fast and Loud, and the king of Gas Monkey Garage. But now, the one person who knew him best is finally breaking her silence. Richard Rawlings' ex-wife, Suzanne, has begun to speak out, and what she's revealing is nothing like the image fans have come to admire. From shocking claims about Richard's ego and obsession with fame, to the emotional cost of building his television empire, Suzanne's words paint a very different picture of the man behind the brand. She describes a marriage consumed by cameras, infidelity rumors, and a growing emotional void that no amount of horsepower could fix. Her sudden disappearance from his life and his social media wasn't just a coincidence. Now, for the first time, we're getting a glimpse behind the curtain. Did Fast and Loud destroy their marriage, or simply expose the truth? This is what Richard Rawlings didn't want fans to know. Long before the world knew him as the loud, fast-talking king of Gas Monkey Garage, Richard Rawlings was just a small-town guy with big dreams, and one woman standing beside him, Suzanne Rawlings. Their story started far from TV cameras and roaring engines. Childhood sweethearts who reconnected as adults, Richard and Suzanne married in 1999, years before Fast and Loud would even exist. She was with him through the early struggles, long before the world saw the shiny empire he'd one day build. Richard has often said that Gas Monkey started from nothing, just a beat-up garage and a relentless vision. But few people knew that Suzanne was by his side during those formative years. She supported him emotionally and financially as he took risks, burned through savings, and chased the kind of success that most never dare to reach for. In early interviews, Richard admitted that Suzanne helped keep things grounded at home while he built his brand, though she preferred to stay out of the spotlight. Unlike many reality TV stars, Richard's personal life wasn't part of the on-screen narrative. Viewers of Fast and Loud rarely, if ever, saw or heard mention of his wife. That wasn't an accident, it was a decision. Suzanne had no interest in becoming a reality TV personality. She remained in the background, avoiding interviews and public appearances, even as Richard's face and voice became synonymous with American car culture. But even though she wasn't on camera, Suzanne was deeply involved behind the scenes. Insiders say she helped manage aspects of Richard's early business dealings and even advised on some of the first merchandising efforts. She wasn't just a spouse, she was part of the foundation. As Richard's brand grew louder, Suzanne remained quiet. But cracks in their relationship would soon begin to show. Because building a fortune in the fast lane doesn't come without a cost. And for Suzanne, that price was only beginning to reveal itself. In 2009, just as Richard Rawlings was beginning to gain traction in the automotive world, his marriage to Suzanne suddenly ended. After nearly a decade together, the couple quietly filed for divorce. No public fight, no statements to the press, no TV drama. But to those who knew them, the split wasn't as clean as the paperwork made it seem. According to people close to the Rawlings inner circle, the cracks had been forming for years. Richard's obsession with success had become all-consuming. He worked constantly, traveling for car auctions, branding deals, and business meetings. The man who had once been grounded by his love for building something from scratch had become increasingly driven by the next big opportunity. And that drive came with consequences. Suzanne, who had been the quiet support behind the scenes, reportedly grew frustrated with the lack of balance in their lives. Sources said Richard would prioritize meetings over meals, deals over downtime, and branding over their bond. As his ambition soared, so did the emotional distance between them. Friends noted that Richard had started changing, becoming more image-conscious, more focused on appearances. The more success he tasted, the more he seemed to lean into the gas monkey persona. And with that shift came tension. Though the divorce was kept relatively private, rumors circulated of arguments over finances, control, and Richard's need to always be on. Some insiders claimed that Suzanne felt pushed out, not just of his schedule, but of his world. But this wouldn't be the end of their story. Because after a few years apart, something unexpected happened, and the world would be watching when it did. In a surprising twist that caught fans and even close friends off guard, Richard and Suzanne Rawlings remarried in 2015. After 6 years apart, they tied the knot for a second time, this time under very different circumstances. Fast and Loud had launched 2 years earlier in 2013 and was exploding in popularity. Gas Monkey Garage had become a household name, and Richard? He was now a certified TV star. But what brought them back together? According to those close to the couple, the time apart had softened old wounds. Richard reportedly made significant efforts to rekindle the relationship. Romantic gestures, long conversations, and promises of better balance. Suzanne, ever private, gave it another chance. Some say she missed the man behind the brand, the pre-TV Richard, who wasn't surrounded by cameras, deadlines, and branding deals. When they remarried, it was without the typical celebrity fanfare. No wedding photos were blasted across media. No episodes were dedicated to the event. It was quiet, intentional. Suzanne still preferred to stay out of the spotlight, and Richard respected that, at least publicly. Still, her presence returned in small ways. She appeared occasionally on Richard's Instagram. They were seen together at private events and even car auctions. But one thing remained constant. She never appeared on Fast and Loud. For fans, it was a mystery. If she was back in his life, why wasn't she on the show? The answer, as it turned out, would become clearer in the years that followed. Because while the reunion may have seemed like a happy ending, it would eventually become just another stop on their emotional roller coaster. One where the pressures of fame, business, and ego would once again collide. By 2016, Richard Rawlings was everywhere. On TV, in magazines, launching restaurants, bars, energy drinks, and apparel. Fast and Loud was a certified hit, and Gas Monkey had become more than just a garage, it was a brand empire. But with that success came a new version of Richard, one Suzanne allegedly found harder and harder to recognize. Sources close to the couple say that while Suzanne tried to reintegrate into Richard's fast-paced life, she quickly found herself on the outside again. Richard's time was consumed by filming schedules, press obligations, business ventures, and appearances. And unlike their early days, he now had a full media machine surrounding him. Those who knew Suzanne say she struggled with the lack of intimacy and growing emotional distance. Even during private moments, Richard was always working, checking emails, taking calls, planning expansions. One former employee reportedly overheard her say, "I don't think he knows how to shut it off anymore." As Richard's celebrity status grew, so did the stories. Rumors began to circulate about infidelity, money conflicts, and a growing ego. Some claimed that Richard was more concerned with maintaining his public image than nurturing his private life. Others hinted at Suzanne's frustration with being sidelined, both personally and publicly. Perhaps the most telling sign came through Richard's social media. While he posted pictures of himself with celebrities, fans, and flashy cars, Suzanne's presence began to fade. She was rarely tagged, rarely seen, and eventually disappeared entirely from his digital life. The couple may have remarried, but by this point, they were living in two very different worlds. One was grounded, private, and trying to reconnect. The other was moving at 200 miles per hour, riding a wave of success that left little room for anyone who couldn't keep up. And that wave was about to crash again. In the years following their second split, Suzanne Rawlings began quietly sharing her side of the story. And what she revealed painted a very different picture of life behind the scenes of Gas Monkey Garage. While she never gave a tell-all interview or released an official statement, those close to her say she opened up privately, and her words were nothing short of explosive. According to friends, Suzanne described Richard as married to the brand, not to me. She allegedly claimed that Fast and Loud and the Gas Monkey empire became his true obsession. Not the cars, not the craft, but the control, the cameras, the constant attention. She didn't recognize the man she had originally married. The humility, the passion, the humor. It had been replaced with ego, performance, and what she called relentless image maintenance. There were also whispers of infidelity and emotional neglect. While no names were ever confirmed, insiders say Suzanne grew suspicious of Richard's behavior during long filming trips and business ventures. Some suggest that his flirtatious public persona blurred into his private life, creating tensions that never fully healed. Financial disputes also came into play. As Richard's wealth ballooned, so did the complexity of their finances. Suzanne reportedly felt that she had been sidelined, both personally and financially, in decisions that affected their shared future. One source close to her said she was there from the beginning, but by the end, it felt like she didn't exist. Whether or not Richard ever responded to these claims is unclear. He's remained tight-lipped publicly. But the silence only fueled the mystery, leaving fans wondering, was the king of Gas Monkey really the man he appeared to be? Or was he building something that cost more than he expected? Fans of Fast and Loud and Richard Rawlings are known for paying close attention to detail. So when Suzanne Rawlings suddenly disappeared from Richard's public life around 2018, it didn't go unnoticed. The woman who had quietly re-entered his world after their remarriage was now gone, and the internet noticed. Up until that point, Suzanne had made subtle appearances on Richard's Instagram, attending car shows, traveling with him, posing at events. She never craved the spotlight, but her presence had been felt. Then, without warning, her image was wiped. Posts were deleted, tags removed, mentions ceased. For a man as public as Richard, the silence was loud. Fans took to Reddit, Facebook groups, and YouTube comments to ask, "Where's Suzanne?" Some speculated they had split again. Others assumed she just didn't want to be part of the Gas Monkey circus. But the more eagle-eyed followers dug, the more patterns emerged. Her absence wasn't accidental, it was strategic. No appearances at major Gas Monkey events. No mentions during Fast and Loud's final seasons. No birthday or anniversary posts from Richard, who had once showcased her in at least a few celebratory moments. It was as if she had been scrubbed from the timeline entirely. The speculation grew when Richard began posting with other women, posing for events, smiling on exotic trips, clearly enjoying life post-Suzanne. Fans who had supported their rekindled romance felt blindsided. The narrative of the high school sweethearts reunited had been shattered. And now, whispers of a second divorce began to swirl. But it wasn't just what Richard was showing, it was what he wasn't showing anymore. Suzanne was gone, and it was clear that this time, she wasn't coming back. By 2019, the silence surrounding Suzanne Rawlings became undeniable, and the truth quietly emerged. Richard and Suzanne had divorced again, finalizing their split for the second and seemingly last time. But unlike their 2009 breakup, there were no headlines, no drama-filled social media posts, and certainly no mentions on Fast and Loud. It was a divorce by erasure, quiet, calculated, and designed to keep the brand intact. Richard never publicly addressed the second divorce. There were no interviews, no comments in press junkets, no acknowledgement at all. Fans only pieced it together through context clues. The disappearance of Suzanne, the sudden rise of a new romantic partner in Richard's life, and the complete absence of any reference to his ex-wife. What stung for some fans was the speed at which Richard seemed to move on. Not long after the divorce, he began appearing with a new woman, posting vacation photos, attending events, even introducing her as his partner at Gas Monkey functions. For those who had rooted for his rekindled love story with Suzanne, it felt like the final nail in the coffin. Meanwhile, Suzanne vanished entirely from public life. No interviews, no social media activity, no public appearances. Friends say she was emotionally drained and ready to move forward, but on her terms, not through tabloids or reality TV. In many ways, her silence was louder than any tell-all could have been. For fans, the fairy tale had crumbled. The woman who had been there before the fame, before the cameras, before the Gas Monkey empire, was gone. And Richard? He remained on top, continuing to expand his brand, appear on shows, and embody the high-octane lifestyle he had built. But even as the empire grew, there was no denying that the road behind him was littered with personal wreckage. And Suzanne's absence was the clearest evidence yet that something real had been lost along the way. To millions of fans, Richard Rawlings is the ultimate car guy, charismatic, confident, and always in control. The swaggering king of Gas Monkey Garage who could flip a car and a punchline with equal flair. But Suzanne's quiet revelations painted a more complex picture. And what lay behind the Gas Monkey mask was, according to some, far less glamorous. Insiders who knew the couple say Richard became increasingly obsessed with curating his image. What started as authentic ambition morphed into what Suzanne allegedly described as performance living. Every appearance, every post, every interaction was filtered through the brand. Everything became about Gas Monkey first. One close source noted, "Not the marriage, not real life, just the brand." Suzanne wasn't alone in feeling this shift. Former employees and collaborators have hinted at similar patterns: pressure behind the scenes, emotional distance, and a focus on optics over authenticity. While Richard rarely lost his cool publicly, those who worked with him long-term said he was a perfectionist who demanded loyalty and expected results without excuse. And the irony? While Fast and Loud portrayed Richard as the charming, sometimes reckless ringmaster, Suzanne's behind-the-scenes account hinted at a man who craved control. Over the shop, over his image, over everything. And in a relationship, that level of control can be suffocating. This duality, public success and private strain, raises a powerful question. Was Richard Rawlings always this way? Or did fame change him into someone he never meant to become? Suzanne's silence on this point only made her story more believable. She didn't need a microphone. The cracks in the mask were already starting to show. At the heart of Suzanne's revelations lies the haunting question fans have debated for years. Did Fast and Loud destroy their marriage? Or was the show simply a magnifying glass on problems that were already there? The truth likely lives somewhere in between. When Fast and Loud premiered in 2012, it wasn't just a TV show, it was a cultural phenomenon. The success was fast, overwhelming, and relentless. Richard became a star almost overnight. The shop turned into a franchise. The business expanded internationally. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the marriage began to deteriorate for the second time. Suzanne, by all accounts, never wanted to be a TV personality. She valued privacy, stability, and connection. Things that became harder to find the more famous Richard became. While he thrived in the spotlight, she withdrew from it. And that imbalance only widened the emotional distance between them. Richard, on the other hand, may have believed he could balance it all: love, empire, television, ego. But as Gas Monkey grew louder, Suzanne grew quieter. By the time the cameras were rolling at full speed, the foundation of their relationship had already begun to crack. Could they have survived without Fast and Loud? Possibly. But that show, with its pressure, pace, and public attention, likely acted as an accelerant, turning small problems into massive rifts and private disagreements into silent disappearances. What fans were left with was a narrative that never got closure. A love story that started before the fame, briefly survived it, and ultimately was consumed by it. Today, Richard Rawlings stands as the face of one of the most recognizable custom car brands in the world. Gas Monkey Garage has expanded into restaurants, merchandise, spirits, and more. He continues to appear in media, attends high-profile car events, and maintains a loyal following. But one chapter of his life is now completely closed, and the woman who helped write it has vanished from the narrative. Suzanne Rawlings is now just a footnote in Richard's story, but for those who paid attention, her role was far more important than the public ever saw. She was there before the fame, helped build the dream, and weathered its consequences twice. Her quiet revelations didn't come in the form of press releases or televised drama. They came through whispers, through absences, and through the silence that followed her exit. And that silence was powerful. Fans now look at Richard with different eyes. Behind the humor, energy, and endless drive, there's a man who has paid a price for his empire, and it's written in the people no longer standing beside him. Suzanne's story is a reminder that success, especially on reality TV, often comes with a hidden toll. That building a brand can cost you a life, and that even the loudest men can lose the quietest, most loyal people without ever realizing it. In the end, the legacy of Richard Rawlings isn't just the cars he restored or the empire he built. It's also the people who helped him along the way, and what it cost him to leave them behind. And for Suzanne Rawlings, the message was clear. He built something incredible, but I was never really part of it.